So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining the session. You're very welcome. The title of the session, as you can see there, is FRNs and Agroecology as a path, or maybe we should say paths, to strengthen nutrition and food security. So I'll just give a few words of introduction to the topic, and then I'll introduce you to the speakers. So I can just maybe, point out that actually food and nutrition security is a huge global issue and a huge global challenge. And of course, that's recognized. And it's the second Sustainable Development Goal. So we are supposed to end hunger and achieve food security by 2030. But currently, we know that around almost 700 million people are undernourished. And of course, poor health and poor nutrition and poor health has lasting consequences, particularly for young children. And in the regions where CCRP works in West, East and Southern Africa, more than 1 in 3 children under 5 years of age are stunted. Which of course is a permanent impediment to development. And in Ecuador, this is about 1 in 4 children. So it's a real challenge. And we know that farm families and farming communities and rural communities face a number of challenges. So of course, insufficient food for all or parts of the year. And that's worsening with land degradation, with the climate emergency. Poor quality diets, which lack essential nutrients, so kind of monotonous diets or poor quality diets in other ways. Then kind of added to that, there is in many places loss of wild foods, which used to be and still are an important part of diets and dietary diversity. And that happens, of course, with loss of forests as well as on farm. And at the same time, food markets are generally offering low prices to farmers, and at the same time supplying, or there's a tendency to supply, an increasing tendency to supply poor quality and low nutrient dense foods to consumers. So, given that scenario, the kind of current state of our current global and local and community food systems, what can agroecology offer? Well, I think it's already been mentioned that agroecology reconnects people to their food, and it reconnects producers to consumers, and it makes healthy food accessible to consumers for use in healthy and sustainable diets. And how does it do this? Or how can it? So agroecology can contribute and does contribute to food and nutrition security by providing diverse foods for home consumption and for local markets. So farmers' agroecological practices increase agricultural biodiversity on their farms and in wider landscapes. And this happens across seasons. So in this way, this can contribute and does contribute to dietary diversity and also to resilience for their own families, but also for the wider communities. And we know that agroecology is knowledge intensive. So farmer research networks and farmer participatory approaches more generally can support this kind of agricultural transition, agricultural food systems transition, by bringing together local and scientific knowledge to address specific nutrition and food security challenges in particular contexts. So that's just a little bit of background on why we're talking about nutrition, because this is slightly, it gives us a chance to dig much more deeply, do a deep dive this afternoon. And we have 3 speakers who are going to share their experiences of participatory research and nutrition, which they've been carrying out with farm research networks and farmer communities in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Ecuador. So I'm excited to introduce the panelists to you. First of all, let me introduce Dr. Fatoumata Hammer. And Fatoumata is a senior researcher in nutrition and food science. She works at the Department of Food Technology at the Institute of Research in Sciences and Applied Technologies, ISAT. And that's in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. And she's also the coordinator or the principal investigator of the CCRP project in West Africa on child nutrition. And Fatoumata is going to present to us on nutrition, a lever for change in rural food systems. So if either Fatoumata or maybe Mary can share the Fatoumata's presentation, please.
Yes, I have it. If that would be helpful, I can share. Just give me a half a second.
So welcome, Fatoumata. I think you're on. Yes, please. Once the slides come up.
Merci beaucoup, Kate. Et s'il vous plaît, est-ce que je peux présenter parce que ça me permet de... Est-ce que je peux activer avec ça?
Oui, si vous voulez présenter, pas de problème.
D'accord. Bon, permettez-moi, voilà, je ferai ma présentation.
Welcome.
Maybe I can just remind people that there's access to translation, to interpretation, simultaneous interpretation at the bottom of the screen. You click on that little globe that says interpretation and choose the language you want. Puedes escoger abajo de la pantalla
Kate, je peux faire écran partagé
el
rapidement?
idioma que quiere. Sorry, go ahead, Fatoumata.
OK. D'accord, donc, merci tout le monde. Merci pour cette opportunité de présenter ici la nutrition, les changements que la nutrition donc, effectue en milieu rural au niveau donc, des systèmes alimentaires. Bon. S'il vous plaît, pour pouvoir défiler les diapos. C'est pour cela que je voulais faire écran partagé à mon niveau pour me faciliter.
Alors, c'est bon, je pense.
Oui, permettez-moi, voilà, je fais écran partagé et puis je termine. C'est bon, vous voyez, vous tous?
Oui.
Yes, we can, Fatoumata.
OK, donc, voilà, très bien. Merci à tous. Merci à Kate pour son introduction. Donc, très rapidement, nous allons ici vous présenter un peu la place que la nutrition a au milieu donc, des systèmes alimentaires en milieu rural. Donc, c'est pour prendre le cas du projet Child Nutrition que je coordonne depuis un certain nombre d'années. Le projet Child Nutrition a pour objectif principal d'améliorer l'état nutritionnel donc, des enfants en milieu rural. Et dans cet objectif, ce projet donc, améliore la résilience des ménages face aux carences nutritionnelles. Donc, à partir de ce projet, nous avons comme mission de fournir les outils nécessaires donc, aux ménages afin de faire face aux différentes carences nutritionnelles. Le projet donc, Child Nutrition a par là comme objectif d'améliorer la sécurité alimentaire, la sécurité nutritionnelle, la sécurité sanitaire. À ce niveau, nous avons donc 3 acteurs d'intervention. Il y a la production, la transformation et la consommation. Il faut noter qu'au niveau du milieu rural, les différents acteurs qui constituent la production, la transformation et la consommation sont des acteurs tous entrant dans le cadre de la production parce que tous sont des producteurs. Et à ce niveau, le contexte rural est fortement basé sur les coutumes, traditions et religions. Donc là, c'est le contexte même du rural. Il y a également les autorités administratives. Et comment est-ce que nous sommes arrivés, quelles démarches nous avons adoptées au niveau donc de l'approche FRN pour pouvoir faire entrer les objectifs de notre mission? La première démarche a été les échanges. nous nous sommes posé la question, qui rencontrer au niveau du contexte rural? Vous savez, le contexte rural est principalement donc dirigé par les autorités coutumières et religieuses. Donc, ce sont ces autorités. Oui, vous m'entendez?
Je voulais juste vous dire si vous pouviez ralentir un petit peu pour les interprètes, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, we can.
Merci beaucoup, Mary. Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, je vais ralentir. Excusez-moi si je suis allée un peu plus vite. Voilà. Comme démarche, nous avons procédé à des échanges. Nous nous sommes posé la question à savoir comment donc nous allons mieux nous faire comprendre par le milieu rural. Pour cela, nous sommes approchés des autorités coutumières et religieuses d'abord, ensuite des producteurs. Et comme je vous le disais, dans le grand groupe des producteurs, il y a les associations féminines qui sont des transformatrices et aussi les autorités administratives. Et face à ces différents groupes, les questions suivantes ont été donc posées lors de nos échanges. Qui sommes-nous? Pourquoi donc nous sommes venus vers ces communautés? Quels sont nos atouts? Et également, quels points sur lesquels nous devons échanger? Et au retour, nous avons écouté aussi tous ces acteurs, qu'est-ce qu'ils attendent de nous et qu'est-ce qu'ils peuvent aussi nous offrir. Donc ici, c'est une première démarche, mais il faut noter que ces échanges donc, se sont basés principalement sur les principes de l'agroécologie de la réforme. Parce qu'il ne faut pas ignorer que le contexte rural est basé sur des valeurs humaines et sociales. Et donc, nos approches ont eu comme socle, comme base, les valeurs humaines et sociales. Et ensuite, nous avons fait savoir donc à la communauté rurale que nous travaillons dans la synergie et qu'il s'agit ici d'un partage de connaissances. Il ne s'agit pas ici d'une voie à un seul sens, mais ici, la voie est à double sens. Chacun donne ce qu'il a. Il n'est pas question ici que nous imposons, mais nous sommes venus pour ensemble avoir. Et les communautés rurales ont compris donc la place que nous accordons au travail qui nous amène, donc la nutrition. Il y a également la diversification. Nous avons aussi utilisé beaucoup le respect des cultures alimentaires et traditionnelles au niveau du contexte rural. Donc, ces différents principes, ces 6 qui sont la synergie, la résilience, les valeurs humaines et sociales, la diversification, la co-création. Donc, vraiment, on renforce la confiance que ces acteurs ont pour nous. Parce que très souvent, ils nous font savoir que les chercheurs viennent plutôt pour imposer. Mais là, à partir de nos échanges, ils ont tout de suite compris qu'il y avait des relations de confiance. Nous avons confiance en eux et eux également, tout de suite, ils ont établi des relations de confiance. Notre première étape, après ces échanges, nous nous sommes intéressés à la femme, à la transformation. Pourquoi la transformation? Parce que c'est le maillon des systèmes alimentaires qui permettent d'améliorer les revenus, de donner une valeur ajoutée à la matière première. Et donc, à partir de la transformation, nous donnons une place de décision à la femme rurale qui, en tout cas, au milieu rural, n'a pas de place de décision parce qu'elle n'a pas de pouvoir d'achat. Également, nous nous sommes intéressés à la transformation au départ pour faire passer la nutrition parce que ce n'est pas la transformation que nous agissons directement sur les plats du ménage. Ce n'est pas la transformation également que nous améliorons la disponibilité, l'accessibilité des aliments sains et nutritifs. Et à partir de là, nous sommes convaincus d'améliorer l'état nutritionnel donc, des enfants et donc de réduire la morbidité. Donc tout de suite, il y aura un impact sur l'économie même des ménages si nous arrivons à réduire la morbidité. La première action qui a été réalisée, c'est l'installation des centres d'incubation. Il faut noter que ces centres d'incubation ont constitué en milieu rural une confiance déjà, la concrétisation de nos échanges. Voilà. Donc, nous ne sommes pas venus pour parler dans le vide, mais tout de suite, les centres d'incubation, le fait de former des femmes, le fait de s'intéresser à la matière première locale, le fait de s'intéresser à des mains locaux, qui, selon eux, qui n'intéressent personne. Ceci donc a vraiment créé la relation de synergie entre nous. Et donc maintenant, il y a un lien très fort. À chaque fois que nous venons, nous sommes très bien accueillis. Et les échanges avec les acteurs de la transformation, qui sont principalement les femmes, ont porté sur quel public cible. Il n'est pas question d'imposer ici le public. Quel public cible, quel produit, quel savoir-faire, quelle technologie, quel équipement. Ce sont des questions qu'ensemble nous avons échangées. Et au fur et à mesure, il y a des formations, mais également, il y a des échanges, des causeries pour faire des partages de connaissances. Et ce sont des technologies locales que nous avons utilisées. Voilà. À partir de là, les autres acteurs, tout de suite, se sont intéressés. Parce que la transformation étant au milieu, en amont, il y avait la production et en aval, il y a la consommation. Donc, tout de suite, il fallait des matières premières de qualité. Et par là, nous avons encore introduit la question de la nutrition, l'agriculture sensible à la nutrition. Pour avoir une matière première de qualité, il fallait donc tout de suite faire intervenir les producteurs qui sont constitués et des femmes, des transformatrices et aussi des hommes, donc de la communauté rurale entière. Et par la production, il y a nos collègues chercheurs semences qui se sont également intéressés. Et par là, nous avons échangé sur des questions de semences. Comment améliorer la qualité nutritionnelle de la semence? Comment améliorer les techniques culturelles? Comment améliorer la conservation? Donc, tout ça, nous avons donc introduit la question de la nutrition de telle sorte qu'elle soit bien comprise par la communauté rurale. Et les difficultés ont été très bien partagées. Et ensemble, avec nos partenaires, qui sont donc les producteurs, les chercheurs sémenciers, nous avons donc réalisé des partenariats assez étroits. De l'autre côté, en aval, il y a aussi les utilisateurs, il y a les consommateurs, principalement ici, nous avons les centres de santé, où il faut mettre en place les aliments de complément qui sont produits par les centres d'incubation. Donc, tout de suite, ces aliments avaient une meilleure chance d'être acceptés. Il y a également au niveau des cantines scolaires, puisqu'il ne s'agit plus encore d'apporter des produits non connus, mais plutôt des produits qui sont faits par les mères de ces enfants. Donc, vous voyez à quel point la nutrition ici a permis vraiment de donner une place à la femme rurale. Et également au niveau des ménages, cette femme qui a déjà reçu des formations sur la qualité sanitaire, sur la qualité nutritionnelle, mais automatiquement, elle le fait savoir au niveau de ses ménages. Et donc, à partir donc de nos actions, aujourd'hui, nous avons pu, par les centres d'incubation, donner une place à la femme rurale, également améliorer les revenus de la femme et mettre sur le marché, ça veut dire avoir une meilleure diversification des produits qui sont sur le plan nutritionnel intéressants, qui couvrent donc les besoins des enfants qui constituent notre public cible. Et également, il y a une meilleure prise de conscience de la question de nutrition dans l'alimentation. Et ceci est très important parce qu'une fois que la femme rurale, une fois que l'homme rural, une fois que le producteur a compris la place de la nutrition, il est très difficile de le faire changer. Et également, des échanges donc, dorénavant sont établis entre les hommes et les femmes pour donc l'alimentation du ménage, pour la croissance de l'enfant. Donc, voilà rapidement ce que je peux vous dire par rapport à la place de la nutrition. Et nous restons donc vraiment disposés à vos questions pour encore améliorer davantage. Je vous remercie.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's wonderful, Fatoumata. Thank you for sharing. I think we will ask people to put their questions in the chat, and then we'll take the questions at the end as happened in the previous session. I think that way we'll be able to manage the time better, but thank you for keeping to the 10 minutes. That was perfect. I think you shared with us the principles that you're following in agroecology. And I think for me, the human and social values came through very strongly. And you showed how you've used that through your different actions around the incubation center and really how it's involving the whole community and producing real outcomes in terms of women's empowerment and nutrition. So that is really exciting. Thank you very much. So I would now like to introduce you to Dr. Mustafa Musa. So Mustafa is a food scientist and he's currently a research scientist at the National Institute in Niger, Iran. And he's also the principal investigator of the West Africa CCRP processing project, and I think another project as well in Niger. So Mustafa's research focuses on grain processing and co-creating innovative technologies using participatory approaches. So welcome, Mustafa.
Oui,
yeah,
je suis là.
Yes.
Mustafa,
Merci.
voulez-vous partager votre écran ou voulez-vous que
Oui,
nous
oui.
le partagions?
Bon, c'est bon si j'arrive à partager. Tu peux venir voir. Je vais
Ok.
partager.
D'accord.
Vous voyez l'écran?
Pas encore.
C'est bon
oui,
maintenant?
oui, ça s'en vient. Oui, parfait. Merci.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Donc, merci Kate et Marie pour donc la présentation. Je voulais agrandir. C'est bon? Vous arrivez à voir?
Oui, vous pouvez faire le
OK.
slideshow.
OK. Donc, je veux faire une présentation en anglais. Ça ne gêne pas les gens. So, I'm going to present an experience we have related to the farmer research network in our local community. So from that, we have a pathway from which we got local solution to improve nutrition and reinforce resilience, which facilitate agroecological transition in Niger and West Africa. So the process we use is actually at early implementation of the project. We had a meeting with farmers, more especially from farmer union, and interested in processing of grain. And then we define priorities with them, design how we can implement the project, learn more from the constraints they are facing, more specifically on nutrition. And we also discuss the option and context, what they have as local solution, and how we can involve those local knowledge and interconnect them with our innovative way of seeing the solution, and then we implement with them. And all this is doing.
Mustafa,
Oui?
can you present in slideshow, or would you like, we can share your slides if you would like, and put it in larger so people can see easier?
Okay, yeah, yes, you can go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just stop sharing and Sandra will share.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption there, Mustafa.
No, it's okay.
Mary, I don't think we're seeing the slides.
Yes, I see that Sandra's just getting the English version because we have both French and English. And by the way, we can share the French versions of the slides in the chat in just a second.
Thank you.
Okay. Donc, vous pouvez continuer. Sur le deuxième slide.
Sandra, yeah, great.
Okay. Donc, comme je disais, tout se fait, so all the work are really interconnecting processes. Yes, yes, through the meeting, and we have all the stakeholders, local farmers, scientists, local authorities, and health community centers. And we share information and learn from each other. So go to the next slide. And most of the work was also participatory. We explore varieties together, improve varieties available. Yes. And local practice, and also local landrace varieties, and how we can work together and yes, to improve and bring solutions. Next slide. And more especially at harvest, we also work together, evaluate in a participatory manner to define and see the result, and also appreciate the grain qualities in terms of color, size, hardness, and do testing and know about the processing abilities, like the concentration, flour yield, and also make some processing and appreciate the product together. So all this is to lead to the next step of the process in improving nutrition of local community. Go to the next slide. Next slide. And we also explore natural fortificants with them that can be used to improve the nutrition, very rich micronutrient plants that can be combined and also rich in vitamin A that are locally available. Next slide. So we're going to share some key results from that interaction with the farmers and how it is transforming the local communities. Next slide. So as mentioned, we have an interconnected process where we bring in innovation from research and also the local knowledge and how we can interconnect, make some correction, optimize, and improve by bringing and giving chance to local farmers to participate in that innovation. So a lot of co-creative products are brought out together, co-constructed model, and also the leadership is shared. And it is really driven by an equity and inclusion of all the local communities, and you have the functional diversity. And with this new change, the pandemic, in terms of also taking care of the new concept and new dimension of this pandemic and how it has to be taken into account to improve what they are doing. Next slide. So, and then from that combination and development of formulas, we go back to lab and analyze and see the actual values of those participatory development products and how they can be compared to local control. So you can see here we have the 4 top formulas are the one we developed together by combining millet, cowpea, peanut, and also some fortificants like moringa, carrot, pumpkin, and baobab. And you can see that most of the values are competed very well with the control that are locally being used. And you can also see in some extent how they are even higher for the case of the iron. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, I think you go back. Yeah, so here we have like the content of provitamin A in the formulation developed, and you can see how they compete so well against the control locally used. Next slide. And here we tested together the formulas in all the local communities. And you can see that this orange, brown, green, and also little yellow are the innovated product, and those one are controlled. And the last two, the pink and the blue, are the control. And in all locations, depending on context, the formulas we developed together compete very well. They were more accepted compared to the local control. All this is a participatory work, and farmers are an integral part in taking decision on those choices. Go to the next slide. And you have also some other values related to all 45 products I have wanted to share, where we developed some innovative products and that were shared and tested in local communities of here and in urban cities, in village. And depending on context, you can see that this is the control, the pink one. Yes. Yes. So most of the developments were accepted. Next slide. And we also share and develop products like this. It's used in feeding school, and we show them how they can make benefits from those products. And they share it and see the result, and people like those products, which is also helping them in terms of nutrition improvement. And you can see here, like as benefit, after expending like $18, they have like about $8 profit on each $18 just for making those snack-like product. Next slide. Next slide. So this is also the same dynamic. We also interact and see gender effect on those products. Next slide. And you can see the sales of products depending on communities. And all those products were the ones that were prepared, and the children like to eat them, and they are making income from them. And this is one of an orphan. This child is an orphan that was, yes, that was saved from malnutrition after the death of her mother by using the formula. Next slide. So we can say that the food innovation centers that were installed in Niger, Burkina, and Mali are really a kind of platform that gives opportunity for the farmers to come and interact and also work with the scientists and develop their products. And more than 20 varieties were tested. We developed about 10 formulas that were co-created and sold. More than 20 health community centers are currently affiliated and referring malnourished children. And we have also empowered more than 100 women, and 10 students were trained through the dynamic. Next slide.
Mustafa,
and then you have
Mustafa,
also
sorry,
dynamic,
Mustafa, I just
yeah,
have to, what, 2 more minutes? Or 1 more minute, in
Is
fact. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So you can go to the next. So there is really a circular economy. Yes. And we have animals that were part of the dynamic, and they were making a lot of income and local authorities. Next slide. Next slide. And you can see that the dynamic is organically being ground. They share the knowledge, and the product is being sold in all locations. And you have the children here. All those children are being used, and they prepare the product. So we think that this is a kind of contribution and a result that we want to share. And all this is through the Farmer Research Center network that we came out with. And the last, yes, thank you so much. And the last slide is just to show the partners. So we just key partners. We have so many others that participated to the dynamic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mustafa, for sharing that exciting work and very involving work which is going on there in your region. I think that the exciting thing you have there is a kind of, for me, something like a participatory innovation platform. I think some of us have seen innovation platforms before, which bring together different producers and traders and so on. But the way that you've brought in the participatory element, and I think through FRNs as well, I think that's very exciting. And I'm sure we'll have questions about that exciting presentation. I'd now like to move to our final presenter. Last but not least, we have Anna. And Anna Deconou, you're very welcome. Anna has a PhD in nutrition from University of Montreal, and she's really transdisciplinary because she also has a master's and bachelor's in earth systems. So Anna brings together her research experience and activism with the Ecuadorian agroecology and responsible consumption movement. And she's going to talk about that now. I should just say that Anna is based at the University of Montreal and also the Trans Nutrition Project. I think that's with WHO. So Anna, welcome.
Hi, I'm guessing you can all see my screen now?
Yes, thank you, we can.
Perfect. Okay, then I'll get going. So hello and bonjour tout le monde y buenos días. I'm Anna Diaconou, and today I will be sharing an experience from Highland, Ecuador about participatory research for exploring the links between agroecology and farmer nutrition. And this is research conducted through the ECOMER Research Consortium, which includes partners in Ecuador and in Canada. And I'm personally based in Canada with the Transnut Research Lab. So in this presentation, I'll be sharing a bit of our experience from our research to understand if and how agroecology promotes nutritional health among farmers. But first, why did we decide to study this? In Ecuador, there exists a national farmers movement for agroecology and a sister movement for responsible consumption, who are interested in promoting food that is healthy for both humans and the natural environment. The farmers and other people in these movements were concerned about how rural food was transitioning from traditional diets based mostly on foods that they could grow themselves to modern diets. Now, modern diets contained novel processed foods purchased at the store and also a much higher quantity of culinary ingredients such as oil, sugar, and salt. Now, the more traditional diets are by no means perfect, as they tend to have an excess of carbohydrates and tend to be low in certain micronutrients. And these deficiencies are problematic because they can lead to childhood stunting and developmental problems, as well as a number of disorders in adults. However, the nutrition transition toward more modern diets does not resolve these problems. And instead, it also adds the problems of excesses in sodium, simple sugars, and saturated fats. And these excesses lead to obesity and chronic diseases such as diabetes and hypertension. Now, when you have problems of both nutrient deficiencies and excesses occurring at the same time, we call this the double burden of malnutrition. And that's what is occurring in many parts of Ecuador and other parts of the world as well. So what does agroecology have to do with this? Well, agroecology in Ecuador didn't start with an interest in nutrition. It began out of an interest to avoid harmful pesticides, to assert indigenous identity in agricultural practices, and to support the natural environment. But over time, people began thinking of food not in terms of just what they grew, but also what they ate. So there started to be an underlying assumption that farmers who are growing in a healthier way might also be eating in a healthier way. In particular, the idea is that agroecological farmers grow more diversity of healthy products than other farmers, so they can also eat those diverse, healthy foods. So our research team worked very closely with leadership from the agroecology movement to design and conduct a mixed methods participatory study that would allow us to understand whether agroecological farmers indeed had healthier diets than other farmers. And if so, what caused them to have healthier diets? We specifically compared farmers belonging to agroecological farmers associations with neighbors in their communities who did not identify as agroecological. And we called these the reference farmers. So what did it mean for us to use a participatory design? Specifically, we spoke with agroecological leadership about the research priorities to address, and we asked them to help us develop questions for the survey that we conducted. And we also spent time living with farmers using ethnography to get a stronger understanding of how to conduct appropriate research. And after we had our initial results, we went back to agroecological leadership and to get their input on what to make of the results and how best to use them. And we also held focus group discussions with agroecological associations to also discuss the results with them. So what did we find? First, we found that agroecological farmers had much higher production diversity than reference farmers. Now, this was no surprise since production diversity is a central part of agroecology. But we also found that this higher production diversity led them to also have higher dietary diversity of certain key food groups. Specifically, agroecological farmers ate an average of 6 of these food groups every day, whereas reference farmers only consumed 5. Doing so, agroecological farmers were more likely to meet their nutrient needs in order to support nutritional health. We also found that agroecological farmers consumed fewer calories from processed culinary ingredients, such as oils and sugars. Specifically, they get 10% of their total daily calories from these sources compared to 15% among reference farmers. and this allowed them to avoid harmful nutrient excesses. Further, we looked at where agroecological and reference farmers obtain their food in terms of their caloric intake. And we found that agroecological farmers consumed more of their calories from own harvest and from the social economy, which includes practices such as barter and direct purchase from other farmers. So we can see in these bar graphs here, here's own production and here's social economy on the agroecological side compared to the reference side. Meanwhile, agroecological farmers consumed less of their foods from the conventional markets, which is here in orange, when compared to the reference farmers. And as it turns out, eating more foods from own harvest and from the social economy was also healthier. But how did we know this? Well, we looked at the nutrients of every food that farmers consumed from these three different food sources. It turns out that foods from own production and social economy, which are the green and purple lines here, were more micronutrient rich than foods from conventional markets. These are all of the micronutrients, and so they're higher up on this chart. So that makes them healthier. Similarly, we found that foods from own production and from the social economy were higher in fiber over here, and they were lower in fat and in saturated fats. So this helps them avoid certain nutrient excesses. So on balance, our results show that agroecological farmers have healthier diets than their non-agroecological reference neighbors. We, of course, found this very interesting from a research perspective. But as part of our participatory approach, we also wanted to hear what the participants thought about it. When members of agroecological associations reflected on these findings, they added some new knowledge that we hadn't detected through our other methods. For example, they highlighted that the agroecology movement was closely connected with an interest in supporting indigenous identity. They explained that this motivated agroecological farmers to adopt the unique agricultural and food practices that ultimately led to healthier diets. And for example, they found growing a diversity of products and consuming from own production and barter rather than from markets to be a means of exerting their traditional indigenous identity. We also spoke with association leaders to discuss how these results may be useful for the agroecology community. These leaders expressed that the results would support them in strengthening healthy practices. For example, they could further emphasize the importance of growing a variety of foods and using these in farmers' own consumption. Also, they found these results to be very useful for their own advocacy around agroecology. For example, agroecological associations often find themselves having to defend their practices in order to gain support from local governments. And having evidence of the nutritional health benefits of agroecology would help gain access to the use of municipal spaces in order to hold agroecological markets. And so to those ends, we produced a lay report that explained in our research results in lay language and easy language to understand so that the stakeholders could use these for their advocacy purposes. So this research produced several key conclusions and lessons. First, we found evidence suggesting that the agroecology movement indeed promotes healthy nutrition among farmers. Further, we found that the Ecuadorian agroecology movement's interest in promoting indigenous traditions was a key driver to the agriculture and food practices that ultimately led to healthy diets. And finally, we found that participatory research uniquely allowed us to produce results that are relevant to the agroecology community. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. And also please feel free to contact me at my email or WhatsApp if needed. And I look forward to discussing further with everyone in this group.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much for sharing. That was a really rich and very well presented. And I think you've probably published that study. So I think people might be interested in hearing that. And I think your findings there were really exciting about that kind of interrelationship between agroecology and I think data and evidence sounded something that people might want to follow up on. So really exciting. So yes, agroecology in the case study that you've looked at was contributing to improve nutrition at kind of multiple levels, which is really exciting. A lot to dig into there. We've got a few questions in the chat. I think, let me just check, but I know we should have about 10 minutes or so for questions. I think I'll go back first of all. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat, but first of all, there was a question from Peter from Groundswell. So Mustafa, I think you're there. Mustafa, Peter's asking you, can you explain more your experience in terms of women's decision-making? Whose interests and needs for diverse diets? Oh, sorry, women's decision-making. That's women as farmers and producers, processors. Have you seen the question? Women's interests and needs for diverse diets may be different from men's interests. So can you explain a little bit more about the decision-making and how you were tracking that? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Peter. Et merci, Kate, pour la facilitation. Oui, donc les décisions sont prises de façon vraiment autonome et elles décident en fonction vraiment des résultats qu'elles voient au niveau même des changements. Et c'est toujours des décisions vraiment qui sont prises de façon participative et elles décident à travers des focus groups. Souvent aussi, elles interviennent directement. Et je suis avec les directrices, les transformatrices, les partenaires des centres. Peut-être qu'elles ont des choses à dire directement. Donc, je vais laisser Houré intervenir par rapport à comment les décisions sont prises. Elle est donc responsable Farmers Lead du centre de Terra. Il y a Hadio qui est là et j'ai aussi Boukari André qui est producteur, qui donne les graines et aussi Yacouba Tanda qui est toujours producteur de grains qui interviennent. Allez-y.
Donc, c'est vrai. Donc, nous sommes autonomes. Donc, nous décidons, c'est nous-mêmes qui prenons nos décisions. On ne laisse personne à décider à notre place. Donc, tout ce que le docteur est en train de dire, donc, je pense que c'est la réalité. Donc, la prise de décision là chez nous, là, vraiment, aujourd'hui, toutes les unités sont autonomes. Personne ne peut prendre une décision d'exécuter. C'est nous-mêmes qui décidons et nous exécutons ensemble.
Peut-être je sais que moi, je peux augmenter étant producteur de graines. Et tout ce que nous sommes en train de faire, c'est fait participatif. À travers les PV formations, informations, sensibilisation qu'on a captées avec la recherche au niveau de Dura, avec Mustafa. Maintenant, c'est en fonction de ça que nous sommes en train de travailler. Nous produisons les graines, nous les transformons et nous les commercialisons. Et la chance en est que, comme c'est une activité qui est très utile, nous sommes approchés avec les services de santé. Les services de santé pour avoir plus de certitude sur la gestion de la matière. Et au niveau des différentes radios communautaires qui sont dans la zone, nous intervenons avec toutes les radios pour une large sensibilisation de ce que nous sommes en train de faire. Parce que nos zones sont des zones où il y a une malnutrition chronique. Comment faire pour faire face à cette malnutrition? C'est à travers les différents produits que nous sommes en train de produire. La farine fortifiée, qui est enrichie avec le moringa, avec le courge, avec la carotte, etc., etc. Pour ce, je donne la parole à Hadio et Yacouba. Merci.
Oui, donc après André, il y a Hadio qui est aussi impliqué dans les activités de malnutrition et qui est présidente donc, du centre de Falwell. C'est un village qui est à l'ouest de Niamey et Terra est aussi exactement à l'ouest, mais sud-ouest. Donc, elle a un mot à dire par rapport à la prise de décision.
Je vous remercie beaucoup de me donner la parole. Je suis une transformatrice dans le centre d'incubation. Vraiment, nous luttons contre la malnutrition en faisant des farines enrichies. Vous avez entendu avec M. Mustafa, il y a la farine enrichie en carottes, en courges et en, comment dirais-je, en moringa et pain de singe. Et toutes ces matières qu'on est en train d'utiliser dans la transformation, ce sont des produits vraiment qui développent, comment dirais-je, l'enfant de tous les côtés, comme la connaissance, comme côté des os, comme aussi les prises du poids, que l'enfant devrait prendre le poids. Et on travaille toujours avec la recherche, avec le producteur, avec aussi la santé. Merci.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mustafa, and thank you so much. I think we've really benefited from hearing your research team partners. So please thank them so much for joining us. I think in interest of time, we're going to just jump to another question. So I hope we'll have time to rejoin, but I think, please thank you everyone there.
L'impact des centres de santé. Donc, au niveau de la malnutrition, peut-être Yacoub Atanda va intervenir pour faire des témoignages. Et il y a la nutritionniste aussi qui est avec nous de l'équipe du ministère de la Santé, Yagana, qui vont répondre à cette question.
Voilà, donc moi je me présente, monsieur Yacoub.
One minute, you're very welcome, just 1 minute short. Thank you.
Ça c'est vrai, vous n'êtes pas seul, hein. Il y a beaucoup de gens qui présentent.
Moi je me présente, monsieur Yacoub. Je suis en tout cas porteur de graines de qualité pour les transformatrices. Donc, quand on parle de graines de qualité, il faut commencer par les semences de qualité et les produire dans de bonnes conditions. Pourquoi dans de bonnes conditions? Parce qu'il faut les produire sans aucun engrais chimique. Il faut les produire sans aucun produit chimique. Donc, pour lutter contre la malnutrition, donc il faut vraiment avoir des semences qui sont en tout cas riches en fer et en zinc qu'on va produire en tout cas pour lutter contre la malnutrition. Donc, pour cela, on a besoin de variétés, en tout cas, des variétés vraiment riches, en tout cas, en nutriments.
Merci.
Great. Thank you so much.